I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to dwell on the negatives of my situation, because I found that in life, focusing more on the positives is what enables you to expand upon those positives and begin changing your perception of reality, which changes your behavioral patterns in relation to your reality, which in turn changes your external reality. But at the same time, I also have come to realize that there is a certain prerequisite of acknowledgement required of you in order to be able to view your reality in a more positive light. In other words, you have to be willing to acknowledge the negatives to accept them. And truthfully, optimism is just the acceptance of the negative aspects of your current situation. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that I don't like about the United States of America after living abroad in Europe, in the Netherlands, for 14 months. The first of which being car culture. So you can see I'm walking through this neighborhood right now, and this is a pretty typical American neighborhood, maybe a bit nicer than your average American neighborhood, but a pretty good representation nonetheless. And what you're going to see throughout this video and throughout pretty much all of the videos that I film in neighborhoods like this in America is that there aren't a whole lot of pedestrians, and there are especially not a whole lot of cyclists. And this is because of car culture. Now, a little known fact about me is that I actually really like cars. I like driving. I've always liked driving. I've always been into cars. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, my mom used to incentivize me to go to school in the morning by giving me these little toy cars, the little Hot Wheels cars. She'd get the little pack of 7 and give one to me every day. But at the same time, I also like freedom. In fact, the reason why I like cars is because I see the car as a symbol of freedom. I can get in my car and go wherever I want to go, whenever I want to go there. But living in Europe has helped me understand that while cars can provide you with a lot of freedom, the restriction of other forms of transportation actually creates a net negative on your freedom. In other words, I've seen a lot of people say in regards to the lack of public transit, the lack of cycling lanes here in the US compared to the Netherlands or other parts of Europe, I've seen a lot of people, especially Americans, say, well, I don't want to ride my bike. I don't want to take public transit. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's the beauty of living in Europe, of having those other options available to yourself, is that you don't have to do anything you don't want to. And if you do like to drive, guess what? There's less traffic on the roads. The roads are nicer. Why? Because there are fewer people driving. Because the people who don't want to drive, who don't feel like owning a car, don't have to. They can take public transit, they can ride their bikes, they can even walk in a lot of cases. And this has permanently shifted my perspective on car culture overall. Being back here and realizing that I can't just get on my bike and go wherever I want to go. I can't just go to the bus stop or the train station and get to where I want to go that way actually feels very restrictive. Now, thankfully, I'm in a position where my parents are allowing me to use their car. They have this old 2005, I think, 2004, 2005 Dodge Grand Caravan. Not the prettiest thing, but it runs. It can get me from point A to point B. But what about the people who aren't in that position? What about the people who don't have the luxury of being able to just use someone else's car free of charge? They're pretty much shit out of luck. And that doesn't sound like freedom to me. That does not sound like freedom, having to rely on other people for rides, or having to put your life in jeopardy by taking your bike on these roads that aren't really meant for cyclists, that are designed with cyclists as an afterthought. That's not freedom. And to say that we live in the land of the free, I found that there are a lot of stipulations like that which infringe upon our overall freedom. Car culture is a bad thing in my opinion. Cars are not a bad thing. Cars are tools. They are great tools at that. But car culture, the reliance on cars, car dependency, that is unequivocally a negative trait that the US seems to fully embrace, probably due to a lack of exposure to other options. Or maybe just due to ego, I don't know. But what I do know is that after having experienced the other way of living, I can never view car culture the same way ever again. Now, the next thing that I don't like about the US after living abroad for 1 year, 14 months actually, is the desolation, the feeling of desolation. Now here's the interesting thing. If you didn't know, I'm an introvert. I know I say it in pretty much every video, but I'm a really big introvert. And I think it's difficult to convey that properly through videos because I'm doing all of the talking when I make these videos. But if you ever meet me off camera and spend any extended amount of time around me, you'll realize very quickly that I keep to myself. I am the kind of person who keeps to myself, I mind my own, and I just stay out of the way and do my thing in solitude. But at the same time, even as an introvert, as a very big introvert, I do acknowledge the need for community. Not even community per se, just for the presence of other people. And something that you've probably noticed throughout this video, as well as other videos that I filmed, to my point earlier, other videos that I filmed since arriving back in the US, is the lack of pedestrians, the lack of liveliness. Now, the city that I'm walking around right now, well, the city in which this suburb is located, is actually a city of over 100,000 people, believe it or not. This city, I believe, would rank in the top 20 population-wise if it were in the Netherlands. But you would never know. You would never know, because where are all these people? Where are they? Where are the 100,000 plus people? I have no clue. I have no clue whatsoever. And I remember when my girlfriend first visited me here in the US back in 2023, July 2023, one of the first things that she noticed and said was a big culture shock for her was that feeling of desolation. Walking around places like this and just not seeing anybody. And I didn't really understand what she meant because this is what I grew up around. But after going to Europe and spending 14 months there in her hometown, mostly, I understood why she felt that way. I understood why she used the phrase, and I quote, post-apocalyptic, when describing this area. And really, this is what a lot of the US is going to look like. It's going to look like these McMansions with nobody really here to enjoy the scenery. I mean, these are nice houses. Maybe a little big for my liking. I don't really feel the need to get a house that big, but I can see why people would want houses that big. But at the same time, I can't help but think that maybe people get houses that big because they have no interest in being out and about. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but I mean, not seeing any kids playing outside, maybe that's because they already have a big backyard and they live in a big house. So what's the need to go to the local park? They have everything they need in their backyard. And they have everything they need on their phone, on TikTok or whatever. I don't know, there are a lot of things going on with the younger generation, and that probably makes me sound very old, but I digress. Different discussion for a different day. I can't help but feel a little bit weirded out by the lack of people, because in pretty much any Dutch city that you go to, even small towns like Vassen, where I spent my last month in the Netherlands, you're going to find some sort of localized or centralized area where people congregate, where the majority of the stores are located. You're gonna have grocery stores, you might have a big church cathedral type thing, you have clothing stores, things like that, restaurants with the outdoor seating areas, and you see people. you see people, even at 2 a.m., sometimes I would be leaving the gym at 2 a.m. in that downtown area on a weekday, and there would be more people outside than I see here in this neighborhood at probably 2:30 p.m. on a weekday as well. And hey, maybe a lot of these people are at work, but I don't know. It just feels weird, and I don't really like it. Now, of course, being in a place like New York or Boston or those more dense urban environments would alleviate that issue. But I don't think you should have to go to a city of 800,000 plus people in order to experience a bustling urban environment. I think that with better urban planning, with a better general layout and structure, I think that, as a matter of fact, I know that it would be possible to create that sort of atmosphere and ambiance even in a city of this size. And I know this because I've seen it time and time again in the Netherlands. Now, the next thing that I don't like about the US after living abroad for 14 months is the sensationalist media. So something else that you may or may not know about me is that I am not into politics. I am not into politics at all. I'm currently listening to Barack Obama's autobiography, and it's been a pretty good book, but I'm more so listening to it because I find him to be an inspirational figure, not because of anything pertaining to politics. But I feel like being here in the US, you almost can't avoid news about politics. You almost can't avoid it, especially with the current president being who he is, and with him saying the things that he says and doing the things that he does. I mean, he's inherently controversial, and the media feeds off of that, because ultimately the media's primary job is to generate clicks, generate engagement, so that they can generate revenue. And sensationalizing everything, exaggerating everything, and primarily covering negative news is the best way to do that. I learned that a while back on YouTube, just creating content, watching people pass me up by following that exact formula, and then being stuck in this sort of purgatory where I didn't want to sell out by doing stuff like that, but I also had bills to pay. And ultimately, that's a big part of the reason why I ended up living in my car. Different discussion for a different day. Here, I've noticed that just on YouTube recommended, maybe you might even see this in your recommendations right now of this video. You can go ahead and check for yourself. But it's almost impossible to avoid news pertaining to politics or just negativity in general. And again, that's because the media here is not here to inform you, it is here to profit off of you. And listen, I understand that businesses need to make money. They do. I'm making money right now off of this video, but I'm not doing it by manipulating you and playing to your negative emotions to keep you psychologically engaged in what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out my own observations. I'm personally fed up with sensationalist media, and I've even resorted to installing Unhook on my Google Chrome browser. Unhook is basically an extension. This isn't a sponsored video, by the way, but Unhook is basically this extension that allows you to turn off your recommended feed, turn off the home recommended feed, all of that, so you can focus solely on the video that you want to watch. But a lot of Americans, there's a cat over there, if you're wondering why I'm looking that way. A lot of Americans, instead of protecting their energy, protecting their psychological integrity, they opt to consume this media, to play that game, and to reward these media companies for engaging in that kind of behavior. And hey, look, they can't really help it, because again, it's just what we're psychologically compelled to do. Humans are much more easily drawn to negativity than positivity. Humans have a collective addiction to drama. I get that. But by making videos like this, my hope is that I can help people become aware of this component of themselves so that they can start taking conscious action to unwind the behavioral patterns associated with that component of themselves. Because as long as people still buy into the sensationalist media, they are being incentivized to continue doing it, to continue utilizing those practices. And this creates a spiral effect where more people get more drawn into it because it gets more extreme. And then because they're more drawn into it, they are incentivized to have even more extreme and exaggerated headlines. And the cycle continues until the world self-destructs. I would like to, just for self-preservation's sake, prevent that from happening the best way that I can. And this is the best way that I know how to do that. Now, I know that based on what I just said, this next point may seem a bit contradictory, but I need you to understand that I'm not here to create fear in you. I'm here to help you become problem aware again, because it is only once you become problem aware that you can become solution aware. That said, the next thing that I don't like about America after living abroad for 1 year in Europe is the lack of safety. The lack of safety. So I'm walking around this relatively safe neighborhood. And we know that this is a relatively safe neighborhood because I'm able to walk around with my $500 camera out and about, not concealing it in any way, shape, or form. And I don't really feel like I'm in any imminent danger, or like I might be anytime in the near future. That's in large part because it's daytime, but even at nighttime, a neighborhood like this is generally pretty safe for someone like me. But the key word is relative. Generally, this neighborhood is relatively safe compared to other American neighborhoods. But compared to what you see in the Netherlands, I mean, it's a night and day difference. In the Netherlands, I felt completely comfortable walking alone at night. Completely comfortable. Here, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. And you might say, oh, well, Jordan, you're just soft. Hey, maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I'm just soft. I'm not from the hood or anything like that, nor do I claim to be. But at the same time, I also believe that being in the wealthiest nation in the world, we should be able to be a little bit soft. We shouldn't have to worry about our safety and security whenever we leave the house. And again, I'm not here to be a part of that sensationalist media problem. Let me provide you with some statistics to back up what I'm talking about. So, in the Netherlands, the whole entire country, 17.8 million inhabitants. In the year of 2024, there were 133 homicides. 133 out of 17.8 million people. In Dallas, just Dallas, a city, okay, one city in the metropolitan region in which I'm currently walking and filming this video, there are 1.3 million people in the city of Dallas, and there were 183 homicides in the year of 2024. There were 50 more homicides in the city of Dallas than there were in the whole entire country of the Netherlands in 2024. Make that make sense to me. Please find a way to justify that to me. Find a way to justify that to me, because that just doesn't add up. That doesn't make any sense to me. That should not be the case. For as much wealth as we have, not just in the US, but in Dallas, okay, Dallas is one of the wealthier and larger cities in the US, there should not be 14 murders per 100,000 inhabitants. And yet, that is the reality. And I remember I was getting my hair cut right before I left the Netherlands to come back home, and the barber asked me, what are the biggest differences between the US and the Netherlands? And the first thing that popped to mind was safety. I said, it's a lot safer here in the Netherlands than it is in Dallas, in Texas. And he sounded surprised. He was like, really? You think so? And I was like, yeah, I do. But in my head, I was like, I know so. I don't think so. This is just a truth of reality. And again, I'm not here to make you feel fear. I'm here to help you realize that it doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be the way that it is. You should be able to go about your day-to-day life without risking getting caught in the crossfire of something that you have absolutely nothing to do with. And look, again, there were still 133 murders in the Netherlands in 2024. That's 133 more than there should have been. But when you compare it from a ratio standpoint, and by the way, Dallas is one of the safer cities in the US, believe it or not. You talk about a place like New Orleans, Baltimore, Memphis, maybe Gary, Indiana, places like that. I'll let you look up those statistics for yourself. But I know from prior experience, looking at those statistics, that New Orleans rivals a lot of third world countries in terms of the murder rate. I think it's somewhere around 70 to 80 murders per 100,000 inhabitants per year, which is absolutely insane. The Netherlands, I think in 2024, with those statistics I just gave you, had something like a 0.7 per 100,000 inhabitants murder rate. Night and day difference.